another week of the Freshman 15. Each week this fall, we want to provide you with tips enabling you to achieve success academically and personally. We're excited to have Brenda Elledge join us today as our guest. I'm going to let Brenda share a little bit more about herself.
I am a licensed professional counselor. I have a private practice in Ellis County and a couple of offices surrounding that. I went to DBU for my undergraduate degree, and then I went to University of North Texas for my master's degree. I'm currently working on my PhD at Texas A&M Commerce. I also do a little bit of adjunct work at DBU, and I enjoy that, really enjoy working with college students. I have a husband and 3 boys. My youngest son just started as a high school freshman. My middle son graduated just now in the past pandemic, and he's trying to figure out exactly what he's going to want to do with himself. So he's not quite enrolled in anything yet. He's still thinking. And then my oldest son went to DBU for a couple of years, made some great friends, and then decided college isn't for me. So he's still kind of figuring out himself.
This week, we want to discuss a challenge that everyone faces in achieving their goals, self-image. Brenda, when we talk about self-image, we often think about body image. What other forms of self-image do we tend to overlook?
When you think about self-image, it is kind of a lot of different pieces that come together. So my total self, right, there's lots of different pieces of who I am that make up myself. So self-image is not just about how I think about my body, how I view my body. It might be how I view myself as a student, how I view myself as a social, relational person. It might be how I view myself as, a person of faith and what that looks like. There's a lot of different parts that make up my self-image. And then connected to that is self-esteem, because my self-esteem, how I feel about myself, positive or negative, is a reflection, or it's connected to what that image is. So they're very, very tied. How I see myself and then how I feel about that is the esteem part. So they're really tied.
Thank you so much for those insights. Can you help us understand more of the things that influence our self-image, or maybe some of the things that influence us, but we just tend to ignore them?
The most influential in developing a self-image is going to be that early relationships with our parents or our primary caregivers. That is just foundational, because we see ourselves reflected back in that relationship with those first caregivers, whether it's parents, grandparents. So that's how we develop that. We internalize that, and that becomes how we see ourselves. If it's really positive, if it's, I cherish you, I respond to you, I think great, you get a lot of good messages. Again, we internalize that. Doesn't mean I'm perfect at everything, but my worth is intrinsic. You might have some experiences later that start to contradict that a little bit. So you might feel pretty good at home, but then you have some social situations, you might have some school situations that kind of contradict that a little bit. And so that can cause some struggles in self-image. But in general, if you kind of got this positive at home, you can weather some of this. So the flip side can happen too. You might not have gotten some good positive messages growing up about your worth and your value and acceptance just because of who you are. But then you did get that in other areas. You got that from teachers, you got that from people at church, you got that through teams that you played with, other friends. So again, that can kind of help mediate a little of this, but both of those are going to be impactful.
Are there any warning signs that can help alert us to problems with our self-image?
Really big is going to be, what kind of self-talk do I have? Negative self-talk is almost always a reflection of how I'm seeing myself. If I say a lot of things about, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that, or what's the point in studying, you're never going to pass, really mean statement that you say inside your head to yourself that you probably would never say to another person is really going to be a red flag that we are viewing ourselves in a negative way, and then consequently that you're going to feel negative about yourself. Something else that you might also pay attention to is when you're in relationship with other people, if you are always thinking about them as better than you, or um, that I either don't deserve maybe to be treated differently or better, and I'll let people treat me badly, that can really be a red flag that that's a reflection of that self-image.
What about correlations between our self-image and how we respond to others or how we respond to the circumstances of life?
If I've got a pretty positive view of myself, not overly so, I know I'm not perfect, I know I've got, weak areas, I'm going to be better able to respond positively to other people. I'm going to see them as humans that have flaws. I'm going to see them with a little bit more grace when they do mess up, because I generally feel good about myself. If there are some wounds and some struggles in that area, I think you can see a couple of other things. You can see one, that I'm not careful about how people treat me. And two, that I just automatically assume the worst about people, that they're going to hurt me, they're going to let me down. I need to protect myself from them. I may not be very good at letting people into relationships. Or I have this fear and anxiety that when they really get to know me, they're going to know what really is there. Again, if I see that, then I'm going to know that I probably have some issues to work on.
One of the questions that many students ask me is, why do people who claim to care about me do things that tear me down?
People behave towards you as healthy as they're able to. I don't think that people wake up in the morning and think, I am just going to be really mean and evil to everyone I come in contact with. I think they absolutely don't do that towards the people they say they love, but I think they do accidentally, inadvertently. They are very wounding. They are very hurtful. Because they may not know how to do anything different, or they're giving out of all they know. It never excuses their behavior, and you deserve to be safe, and you deserve to set boundaries and not be placed in a situation like that, or to stay in a situation like that. But it also does help me understand why someone would say that, I love you, but then maybe say some very wounding and hurtful things.
Are there any practical things that we can do to break this cycle and rewrite the negative stories that we have told ourselves?
I think people can start with noticing that negative self-talk, slowing themselves down. It might be a pattern in a particular area. So maybe I struggle in this area. Maybe it's about academics, or maybe it's about relationships. And in that kind of situation, it's helpful to journal about that. My thoughts, my feelings, go back and read it. Maybe there's some early memories that where I first felt that way. I can examine that a little further. I do that with clients, helping to see those patterns and then helping them walk through how to reframe that. Our brain is so used to going this negative direction. Once it's established, there are specific neural pathways that help you. It's good. We're created that way. That's because the neural pathways in your brain just know how to go there. If you're busy saying negative things to yourself, you're going to go there. So you have to purposely and intentionally stop it, slow down, and train it to go the other direction.
The scripture indicates that God formed us and made us in his own image. How might this understanding of our intrinsic value influence how we view ourselves or how we view others?
Knowing how God values me, knowing how he sees me as his creation, and just I have absolute worth and value in him as his child, apart from anything that I ever do or that the world ever thinks is worthy. That is foundational. I can mess up. I can not be amazing. I can never finish that PhD, and it won't change the value that I have.
Brenda, thank you for helping us better understand this universal struggle, as well as giving us some tools to work on our self-image. I also want to thank each of you for joining us for this edition of the Freshman 15. We want to hear from you, your feedback for this topic or suggestions for future topics. Maybe you identified a consistent warning sign that Brenda talked about in your own life. I encourage you to find help. You can contact the counseling services on your campus or locate a licensed counselor in your area. Before we go, Brenda, is there a final thought you would like to share with these students?
It's just normal that you're going to have times of doubting yourself, not liking certain parts of yourself, that self-image, having some woundedness. I think that's normal to being human, but I also think it's just good for people to know they're not alone.